Is there ever a time that we really should worry about a famine or worried about not having food? Seeing shortages here and there, having food inflation prices here and there, then we have some people say, oh, I don't see those problems. While other parts of the world are seeing starvation. So are we ever going to see a whole global style famine? It has happened in history. We know that biblically. We talked about that with Joseph. But bottom line is, are we going to see that again? Well, there are some startling stories about what we're doing across the globe and what governments are doing across the globe that really could impact our food, the way we get our food, and the dangers of, really, are we going to see hungry people even in countries like America? Let's jump into it today. I think this is going to be a good video. We're going to talk about some things that should be scaring you just a tad, but not only that, it should help us prepare our food and making sure that we are taking care of our family. Guys, let's jump into it. The video is going to be a good one. It starts right now.
I am made to be free.
Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here. We honestly appreciate every view that we get, and we want you to know that, and that's why we do a giveaway each and every month. All it takes is you subscribed, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but let us know what you think about it. Again, remember, around the middle of the month, so next week, we'll be doing another giveaway to our subscribers that from our channel and also from our other channel, our vlog channel, The Max Life. We've done a lot of our pantry videos on that channel, so you'll see my wife talking about the pantries, and that's kind of what the video is on today, is on food and maybe the dangers of our food system. We know that. We know we've seen some shortages. We've seen some inflation of prices. But what really are we doing about our food globally? I think that's what we need to be talking about today's video. So we're going to jump into that right now. So let's talk worldwide just for a second, then we'll kind of hone in back to America. We know there's been major globalist push about climate change and climate agenda and how they want to see a different way of rethinking food, rethinking what it means to live in America or live across the globe. So for instance, what we're seeing now is we're seeing issues with our food systems. We're seeing a war, for instance, in Russia and Ukraine, that is causing major issues with grains and the fertile soil that typically grows a lot of food in Ukraine, and now we're seeing that not taking place. We see the issues with the Netherlands. The Netherlands now having issues where we're seeing almost a collapsed government, all because of these low emissions that they've put on these farmers. The Netherlands is not big, however, it grows a tremendous amount of food. I think it's second behind us. So if we see these areas that typically would export a lot of food, such as Ukraine and in the Netherlands, and they're not all of a sudden putting those grains on the market, and then we see places like China and a lot of Asian areas, even India, buying a lot of the things on the global market, are we really putting ourselves as a globe, as a whole world, in a precarious spot when it comes to food and making sure we have enough food for our families? Not only that, it's the natural food. For instance, studies show that we are going high on population. We know we have our populations getting more dense and more dense. Well, the more people live in cities, the more they depend on farmers to grow the food to provide for them. Now, the scary thing is we're seeing more natural foods not being grown, of course, and we're starting to see more manipulated or GMO-style foods grown or produced. The question is that food healthy or is it not? Also, who is eating that food, and are we making sure we're getting all the data on it to make sure it's good for us or bad for us? So in the words of our wonderful friend Klaus, if we will own nothing and we will be happy, then we will rely on other people to provide our food always. So it goes back to the broken food system. If we rely on foods that are not natural, God-given foods, such as our vegetables, our grains, and our meats that are raised off farm, and we start seeing more produced basically with some kind of cell mutation or some kind of manipulated gene, then I think we're going to see more health problems, which will cause a catastrophic event when it comes to health as well. But if we all of a sudden see these foods are not good for us, how are we going to feed the populations? How are we going to feed all the people that are typically in starvation in areas that are in third world countries, or some of these areas such as Ukraine and Netherlands? If they're not producing the food, who's going to take that over? So now let's move to the stories about America. There's a study that showed that freight and trucks like 18-wheelers are having problems with moving foods. California is a monster vegetable hub. It's always been a place where a lot of food is produced and pushed all across America. Well, because of all their emissions issues and because a lot of the policies they're passing that kind of goes along with this globalist push against certain items that we typically would use, such as fuel and 18-wheelers to get food across America. If we see them pushing this globalist or climate agenda, then you're starting to see it where our manufacturing and our freight and our 18-wheeler and our trucking of goods across America struggle. Now, if we see that typically the food across the world is struggling, and we all of a sudden see that the food in California may not can get across America because some of the policies is causing freight and 18-wheelers and trucking to wear thin, then that's going to be a problem even here in a first world country like America. Also, I saw just this week that Florida got passed up for Brazil when it comes to how much oranges and orange juice is consumed by Americans, and the majority of that now comes from South America. So our problem is we're moving to this globalist society. However, we're going to have to rely on freight, shipping, and all the needs to get it here. Well, if we see a manipulation because of the war, because of other policies across with the Dutch farmers, we're going to see a problem with that supply chain once again, like we talked about just a few years ago. So if we see those problems taking place, how do you think you and your family are going to get the food that basically is coming to the groceries? We see more grocery stores saying out loud that either the prices are going to keep on inflating, even with the food costs down. Food prices has actually stagnated, meaning the price did not go up over the last month or two. The inflation is still set. Yes, it's higher than last year, but it's not inflating much more than what it was this time last month. The problem though now is the food may have stalled in price, but now getting the food to you is going to cost more because of freight, because oil is coming back up a little bit. It's creeping back up. Also, the supply chain, again, is going to be dependent on shipping across the world. If we're all fighting over the same grains, we're all fighting over the same global goods, that means the price of that is going to cost more. Because why? If the supply is lower, then the cost will be affected and it will cost more to get that food here. So right now we're seeing a stagnant market saying, well, chicken has kind of stalled, eggs have kind of stalled, beef has kind of stalled just for at least a month. Still high, but it hadn't went up again month over month. But now we're starting to see, okay, well, now we're going to have to depend back on the supply chain to either feed the animals or to provide for us when there's not enough. So going back to the emissions issues and how the climate agenda is affecting our food. Well, people say, oh, it's just the Dutch farmers. That's not a big deal. That won't affect too much. Well, it's Ukraine. It won't affect too much. It's just California. It won't affect too much. There's an article from Zero Hedge that said the same thing. Of course, with Sri Lanka, we knew that. But even in Germany and Canada, they're starting to push these same policies, which are causing trucking issues, which are causing farming issues, which will cause for more food to not be produced or not be able to get to its source. Now, I'm fully agreed the fact that I don't want to use chemicals on our personal food. Like we talked about, we're organic here and we try to grow as much food as we can, and if we're not growing it, we want to buy as much organic food as possible. So when they talk about not using chemicals and things like that, that's great. I love that aspect of it. However, because people are not growing their food and because they're not taking that responsibility, and of course, if you live in the city, I understand there's certain things you can't do. But that's all the more reason that you have to prepare a little bit more for them people like us who may have a farm. When people have the excuse, and please don't take this wrong, but when people have the excuse to say, well, I can't grow food, I'm in an apartment, I'm just a sitting duck. So we can't keep our proverbial head in the sand. I get comments all the time from naysayers that say, oh, there's no shortages, my grocery store looks full. Okay, well, is your price going up? Okay, maybe your price is not going up. I think that's awesome. You need to keep shopping at that grocery store. That should give you all the more reason to start buying it now. If you think I'm telling you a long drawn out fib, and it's a lie, first of all, do your research. But secondly, just buy food. Buy a little extra food, because at least you'd be prepared. If not, if I was completely wrong and food never comes in shortage and we never have all this genetically modified processed food and health food is always available. If I'm wrong and that's always right, then guess what? All you've done is buy food and actually saved a little bit of money, because it will go up in the next few weeks, months, years, just because of standard inflation and standard grocery pricing. So what does it cost you? Buying an extra box of macaroni? Buying an extra chicken breast instead of just one pack, you buy two? So it's worth the trouble. It doesn't matter if you believe what I'm saying as in preparedness, or that food is going to see starvation levels in some third world countries, or we don't have enough food to feed America. You're going to always probably see some form of food. But the question then comes down to, is the food quality, and is that food going to make us sicker or more healthier? So Canada, Germany, Sri Lanka, of course, it's a failed state almost. The Dutch farmers with the Netherlands, now it's collapsing government, or that's what the news is saying. And then we hear emission issues with California. All those things will affect our food. And depending on how long the war goes on in Ukraine and Russia, that will affect the food. Well, then we throw in the money issues, and we throw in all the other little conflicts across the globe that's going on. And I believe we're going to see more problems when it comes to our food. The closer we get to these dates of 2030, all this push where they want to reset and they want to change the way, rethink food, rethink agriculture, rethink government. When we start hearing that, that's a scary thought. And we start thinking that rice and cows are killing our ozone, our atmosphere. I think we have misconstrued it so much that we don't even know what's right or wrong anymore. And so therefore, even when I say these kind of videos and have these videos and we talk about the stories that just have been wrote and talk about the research that's been done, nobody wants to believe it. And that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. Don't believe anything that you hear. We talked about that last video. Make sure you do your own research and gain wisdom yourself. But don't you think if all of a sudden you keep hearing something over and over and over, then it feels like it's real to you? So if you hear that everything's perfect and that we're not going into a recession and that food is always available, if you keep hearing that from every source, then you're going to think it's so true. Isn't that amazing how we've really been in a recession for the last few years? However, because they've changed the definition that money's okay and you're not struggling, then we believe that we're not in a recession. You've heard that spin for really the last 2 years that we're not in a recession. We're not in a recession. Well, if you see all the people not working and you see the people living back at home with their parents and you see the fact that people have no savings, we've talked about this with baby boomers and Gen X and even into the millennials and Gen Z, people are struggling to be able to buy a home. People don't even have a discretionary $1,000 sitting in a savings account or emergency fund to pay for any major needs. There's more credit card debt now than it's ever been on the average consumer. So when people say, oh, the money system's not broke, or our food is not costing more, how can you come to that assumption when everybody's feeling it in their pocketbook? Everybody's seeing the costs be higher on the shelves. So I go back to this. I plead with you. Buy some food just in case. Just have a little extra food. Please do not think that it's all going to be okay. If it is, and I'm proven wrong, or a lot of people are proven wrong, that's great. I hope I am proven wrong, and I hope that we start growing massive loads of foods and we have a big resurgence of farmers. But the average farmer is over 50 years old. The average farmer is getting pushed out by bigger corporations and bigger landowners that is now pushing away from the common farmer and moving to a different style agriculture. Rethinking agriculture. Rethinking the way we look at food. That could be scary. I don't want to own nothing, and I'm not going to be happy if I don't own anything. The freedom in America, what we have in America is still freedom. And we have this land that we can grow food on. If we choose to hunt, we choose to fish, we choose to practice our self-defense, whatever we choose to do, we still have those freedoms. Please, people, fight for your freedoms. Let politicians know it's time to stand up and quit pushing these narratives that are harming us and harming our food. A lot of globalist push, a lot of climate push, and it's ultimately hurting the American people and hurting the people of the world. We should be condoning growing food in any ways, especially more natural foods. So if we don't change the way we're going, if we don't do an about face and change the way we're looking at food, we will see more famine, more starvation. So start putting food up. Start preparing with your food. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this video. God bless.